Hi everyone, so today I'll be speaking about The Future of the Race, Identity, Discourse, and the Rise of Computer-mediated Public Spheres by Dara and Byrne. She argues that it is important for minority youth to have access to dedicated online spaces and not just mainstream or race-neutral ones. Some of the interesting points that I picked up from this article was space, otherness, online activism, and credentials. Also, since I'm working on a final project dealing with nostalgia fueled by a hypersensitive consumer-controlled content, I may be jumping back and forth between my take on the essay from a general perspective and a reading catered to the nostalgia era that we seem to be in. So, how space works online and offline is a key insight into the human behavior. We can go into a debate about whether our behavior is inherent by nature or taught to us, but that's not what I want to focus on today. I'm more interested in why we create, or rather categorize ourselves into these so-called spaces, since essentially that's what a space is. Although you would think that the internet wouldn't have quote-unquote spaces, because the idea is that we will all be using the internet. Somehow we ended up creating specific spaces for not just specific people, but for specific ethnicities. This is the online version of people preferring to live in enclaves or end up living in enclaves because of convenience. Here, think about Arabs in Bay Ridge, Asians in Flushing, brown people in Jackson Heights, Latinos in the Bronx. So we seem to always want to categorize ourselves for no particular purpose, but to categorize. And this may have to do with how we process information. It's weird to think about, but imagine going to a store that is not categorized. Most of you may be thinking about soccer mom stores such as Walmart or Marshall's, but even then, they're relatively organized, at least by departments. Also, notice how I changed my word from categorize to organized. They mean completely two different things, but perhaps that's why we have an undying need to label things, so that we are familiar with what they are and we don't think of it as an unknown, and we don't know what to do with the unknown. So that's why we tend to label things and put them in categories, so it keeps us sane, I guess, just knowing that we're familiar with what this is. Anyway, I'll leave this thought here. But something that Byrne mentions in her essay is the people on the sites would ask, where are you from? Who are you? And I think the minute we answer to people that ask, but like, where are you from, we enter into this idea of the otherness, and it's a ditch that will be hard to come up from. When we assign otherness, whether to ourselves or to other people, we raise other concerns such as subordinate, inferior, different, or even non-dominant. And this is problematic because, as Byrne mentions, this limits you to a race as a means of grouping, which can potentially end up in stereotypical thinking about the other person. And my question is, what do people even do with that? When they ask, where are you from? What do they do with that information? Like, the person who answers, or I guess the person who asks, where are you from? Do they collect that answer and archive in the back of their mind? Like, do they have a folder for each ethnicity or something? I think it's mind-boggling and crazy that is something some people would start off as a conversation starter. Being Muslim, whenever I attend masajid or prayer places, there's usually people of all walks of race and ethnicities. So when I'm in the sister side of the masjid, women, they come at me and they will like literally bombard me with questions about my ethnicity. It doesn't help that I look racially ambiguous, but it's just, I think it's weird that that's, or not, I guess that's what people are interested in. I don't know why people are interested in knowing where someone is from or what typical box they want to put you in. But anyway, so I literally went to a masjid one day, and an Egyptian woman, she came up to me and she asked me something, and I think it passed to her, and she was just like, oh, where are you from? And then she was just like, no, you're Egyptian. And I was just like, no. And she's like, yes, you are. Look, you're Egyptian skin, or I don't know what she was going on with, but I just said okay because I didn't want to argue with an old woman that day. And I was just like, I honestly don't care because I'm used to it. Anyway, so who is to say who is who and who is what? What are the hardcore credentials? Are there any? Byrne discusses this in the essay as users on the public sites would need to claim that they're half black or half this. And in a way, by them claiming that, they feel that now they can attest to whatever it is that they're attesting to. In relating to my project of nostalgia, I definitely feel like there is this ego with we're the 90s kids, or the 90s kids are better. We amplify this idea of you can't sit with us. And being a 90s kid, I don't do it as much, but once in a while, I would comment on shows my younger siblings watch. For example, the way I grew up watching rock, like he was a wrestler, not dressed in a tutu, being, I think he was a tooth fairy in a movie. But so that's weird. And even Raven Simone from That's So Raven, and now she's in Raven's Home. I grew up watching her do dumb, hilarious things, and now Raven is an Uber driver in her new show, and it's like, I don't know if in this generation they see more of the reality side to it, but my siblings are growing up watching Raven as a mom, whereas I saw her as a teenager, or I used to watch her being a teenager. But I guess Rock did make a comeback because now he's in Jumanji, so it's kind of like the best of both worlds in a way. Anyway, but I think just the 90s kids, something that we always say, or just people from the previous time, this idea of like the good old times. And like nowadays we can't even revive like good old family shows. Think about Fuller House, their attempt to revive the show. Yes, there are people who watch it, but I honestly think it's people who've watched Full House who are coming back to watch Fuller House, not new audience members coming to watch Fuller House. Like Aunt Becky literally conned colleges for her real life daughter, like spot on, because she would have probably had to do the same for her TV sons. But we can't have Aunt Becky anymore because the internet would not have allowed that. And the interconnectedness that the internet has created doesn't let anything or anyone escape what they're doing. And this may also touch on the cancel culture that we're in. Also, the interconnectedness, it encourages grassroots actions. Byrne speaks about this, about the charity concert that was canceled because the performer lineups included artists who have lyrics that are offensive to the LGBTQ community. So I think out of all this, what interested me the most is the idea of how we are able to form groups online, but with the ability to create social change as well. Like, who thought of this? Brilliant person. Being behind a person allows participation from both introverts and extroverts.